So now
All
we're
right.
going to Sif Bays,
Yeah.
which Sif Bays in Simmons 75, Ayin Hay. And we're going to talk about, like we Shavuos Meidum Miktas, talking about a single aid, single witness. All right, let's get started. Manali biyadcha. So a guy comes and says, "Hey, he has my money."
My money.
Um, "Ein lecha biyadi ela hamishim," and the defendant says, "I don't owe you 100. I owe you 50." Chayiv l'shava min atayra she'ein chayiv lo ela hamishim. So the defendant, as Gemara, is the classic case. He has to swear. There's an obligation to swear from the Torah, a biblical level oath, not a rabbinic oath, that he's only responsible for that 50, but Eisen Chamishim Shahida. And then he only gives the 50. So the if the defendant has a witness to support that claim, even just one, so then there's a machlekes. Some say that means he doesn't have to take any shavua. And others say, no, no, it doesn't exempt him because it's only one witness. Sorry, Charlie.
So according to everybody, if he has two
You would have
witnesses
to take a
that
shavua.
that that he paid it back or whatever it is, then he's fine.
And it says check out in ten chapters in page Zion or 12 chapters, page Zion in 87, subsection 6. We're going to talk about this more.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So we start with the Sma. And the Sma says Chayv Lishav Natero. He is um obligated to swear from the Torah, meaning as for from per biblical law as opposed to rabbinical law. Zehu Meide Mimiktas. This is the law of one who admits to to part of the claim. The Amrinon Bechol Makim Shechayv Lishav Aleh Shvur Deiraisa. That whenever he's required to swear on this, on Meid B'Miktas, it is an oath from the Torah. It is a biblical law.
Biblical, bro.
Oh, what?
It's biblical, bro.
Biblical, yeah. And we learn it out from what it says in this is the place where it's talking about guards, meaning somebody who's watching your stuff. And of course, there's different rules there. If you're getting paid to watch it, if you're not getting paid to watch it, etc. And this is in Shemais. Ki hu zeh, because he is it. I won't get into the Monty Python skit right now, but you're it. Pirushay, and the explanation of this pasuk, sheyemar anifkad, that the nifkad will say, meaning the guy who the claim is against, the guy who's holding the collateral, or in this case, the guy meaning any guy who the claim is against. Davar zeh miktsas mitiviyascha nosat biyadi lishmir. Right, so this guy says, I gave you 100 bushels of wheat to watch, and he says, no, you only gave me 50 to watch. And on this case, the scripture finishes and says, Shavuas Hashem tia ben shneim, an oath of Hashem there will be between the two of them. Right. So from this you learn that somebody who, even if it's not, of course, in the pasuk, it's talking specifically about the case of a shemer, meaning like we had before. One of the questions they asked, what did he give you a loan? Is your property in his possession, etc. So it's talking specifically about when your property is in one's possession because he gave it you to watch. But from this we learn out in general, right? That this is the case by anybody who admits partially. Shehu hadin b'meida mikzas b'tainas malve. That this is also the rule, not just by someone watching your stuff, but also by a loan. Um, and this is, of course, only if you admit partially. Aval b'kefer hakel. However, somebody who denies the whole thing, lo yitzrichu hatayla lishava. As far as the Torah, the biblical law does not require you to take an oath in that case if you admitted to the entire thing. The chazaka who bistam bnei adam, because it's what do you call it? You had a good word for chazaka. It's like a status quo, but it's the
I don't remember.
a person. Generally, a person has
It's precedent.
yeah. It's in other words, it's the
I don't know.
it's the stat the star. It's like the status quo. The
It's this,
status
yeah.
quo is that is by a regular person. The enemy isn't b'fnei tevei alich b'bakar. They don't have the chutzpah in before the claimant, before the plaintiff, to deny everything. So if somebody denies everything, we're gonna assume pretty much he's saying okay, he's saying proper. Avo but made the miktas, but somebody that's only admits part of it. Shekivon the haida, that since he admitted right in part of it, amrinon, so he say bechula boi the what the ludi. I think means like to admit also. Meaning really he wants to admit the whole thing. Elo delay, but he doesn't have the money. He doesn't have the money right now. Mois l'shalim, he doesn't have the money to pay. Savur ishtamit mi'amalve. Right, so he says, "I'll what's it called? I'll like hold back from the lender. Like I'll deny right now part of it. Ad havali zuzi until I'll have the right amount of zuzim, until I have the right amount of dollars. And then I'll pay him. They never say, oh, I taka remembered you right. It's or so he's going to admit part of it because he doesn't have the chutzpah to deny the whole
Right.
thing.
This is jogging memories. This is giving me flashbacks to, like my seventh grade learning this Gemara. This is from
You're
the
right.
Gemara. This is
Yeah, it's
all,
the yeah
yeah,
the classic one.
takes me back. Yeah.
Oh, the
By
car.
the way, by the way,
Yeah,
I asked ChatGPT what's the best translation for chazaka. So it said, of course, it depends on context, but for legal Talmudic context, it's either you could say presumption, legal presumption,
yeah, that's it.
or a or a possessory claim. So it depends. Yeah,
I
I think
think
in
I
this
think
case,
I think it was a
a legal
presumption, though, right?
presumption.
Is what we
Presumption
used in the
is a good.
past. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds about right.
it means we can safely assume.
Yeah.
Well, the kach
Right.
ram yatera shvuah, and therefore the Torah put a shvuah on him, put an oath on him. Um, the vaday lo yishav the sheker the ein chayiv lo hichad chayiv. That in other words, which means if he's for sure not gonna swear falsely that he doesn't owe him if he owes him. Meaning, if we're assuming that this is especially think like if you think logically, we're assuming this is a person who he doesn't have the chutzpah to deny the whole thing, even so he's admitting in part because he doesn't have the chutzpah to deny the whole thing. So for sure he's not going to have the chutzpah to take God's name in vain. The ha ef shelatakin it's ashvur shishmat l'shakin. Why? Because he can't fix. It's impossible to fix the oath that he takes. Right? If I just deny it and then I'll pay him back later, I can fix it by paying him back later. An oath taking God's name in vain, you can't. Not so easily fixed.
Can't undo that. You can't
Yeah,
take it back in.
yeah, imloy tavu adam elohumi atzmei ve'amar mana hayel avich biyadi v'nasati li chamishim. No, wait, sorry, I'm the wrong. I went to the wrong thing. I
Yeah,
jumped.
that's it.
I jumped again. The kaula
So
haven,
kind of line,
and it's easy to understand. In other
I'm
words,
bizarre.
this is logical. why a person would find the shvua more.
With Kal Hanan, okay.
V'ayin mashu kasavti id mizer ishim bezayin. See what I wrote further in this in the beginning of 87 of chapter 87. The
We'll
shach
get there. Yeah, I just want
shach.
to say, by the way, something I thought about the word ramya that we say, it means to push on, to place
Yeah,
upon somebody. It made me think, and this is more, a little bit of, the censor should jump in here to censor out my happy curses. No, my made up word over here. You could call it
yeah,
a Purim Torah if you want. But how you have the other word we have that we were talking about before, ramos, like
right.
trickery and sly, maneuvering
Yeah. Well,
and I think
in this case it makes
there's
sense.
relationship.
It's like
There's
the
relationship where
Torah is
this
outmaneuvering him.
pushing. You're pushing pressure, and what do
Right.
we do when chas v'shalom, when a person is doing ramos, when he's doing something not so great? Yeah, he's kind of like trying to push his way into
Right. So
push his
it
way out
actually
of it,
works out.
push
It
his way
actually
around.
works out good. You said the word maneuvering.
Right. That's
So
what I'm
so
saying.
here,
It's
in a sense, the Torah is outmaneuvering him.
yeah, here the Torah is maneuvering to put in place it
Right,
upon him, and
because
he's trying to maneuver.
he's going to do this thing because he feels he doesn't have the chutzpah, what it's called, and the Torah is flanking him.
Right, right. But both are like this placement, this push, this
Yeah,
pushing, this pressure, this yeah, right. Like you said, maneuvering.
yeah, yeah, pushing him to yeah.
All right. All right. So now back to the Shach.
Now the shach chayv lishav min Torah. He has to swear from the Torah. Ameninon b'shas b'kamaduchti. Like in Bab Metzia, it says in different places in the Gemara. Mipnei ma omra Torah made them mitzvah taina yishba. Why is it that somebody who admits in part of the claim must swear? Why chazaka ein adam meiz b'fnei balcheve? Because it's a presumption that a person that a regular person is not going to have the chutzpah before the person that he owes. V'hai b'chuli ba'i dinichperei. He wants to deny the whole thing. V'hai delei chafrei, and the fact that he didn't deny it, mishum de'ein ad of meiz panav, because the person isn't he doesn't embarrass his face, which
Not
means
that rude.
he doesn't have the chutzpah, he doesn't have the audacity.
Right.
Um, V'hai b'chuli ba'i dilu delay. And this guy, this borrower, he really wants to admit the whole thing also. V'hai delay oidile ishtamutiho the kish the kimishitomit minei.
Stamit.
Yeah, like I think it's like holding back, or to like he's basically looking. It's a delay tactic. Um, Meaning that what's it called? That the one second, where's yeah, it's that because he doesn't have it. It's funny. The Shach says it a lot more cryptically than the Sma. The Sma is like says it a little more clearly. But basically saying to deny the whole thing, he doesn't have chutzpah. And the truth is, really, he wants to admit the whole thing. He's not. He doesn't even really want to deny the whole thing. He doesn't want to deny any of it. He just wants to hold off the guy who did him a teva,
Right.
right? This guy
Trying to.
did him a favor, and he's embarrassed to come and tell him. But he doesn't have the
Right.
money, so he just wants to delay it.
Also, this thing like Ramos, where he's trying to push it off. He's trying to avoid.
Yeah,
He's trying to dodge it. Right.
yeah.
He's just trying to.
So the what do you call it? But to deny the whole thing, he also doesn't have the chutzpah, right? V'savar, and he holds dahavli zuzi pranoli. Right, until I have the money and I'll pay him. I'm just going to say this until I have the money, and then I'll pay him. I'll make it right. Um, the Amar Rachmana, and so therefore the Torah says Rami Shvual. We're gonna push a shvu on him. Ki heichi deludi le bechuli, so that way he'll just admit to the whole thing as which because that's the truth. He'll just admit to the truth. Why? Because he'd rather, meaning it's for the Shach posed it a little bit differently. He gives a little more explanation. He's giving the person's what do you call it? His how he's weighing this. Yeah,
Uh, his thought
because
process is
because fine, he wants to admit though he doesn't have the money.
right.
He doesn't have the chutzpah to deny the whole thing, but he for sure doesn't have the chutzpah to take an oath and take Hashem's name in vain. So what's he going to pick? At the end of the day, I think the shach is almost like answering. So maybe if you make him take a shvu, you'll push him to just to go back and deny the whole thing. No, he still doesn't have the chutzpah to deny the whole thing, and he'll say, you know what, I'm just gonna have to come clean. I'll tell him, listen, I admit it, I owe him, and I just don't have the money because
Good.
that's bet because in a person's mind that's gonna be better than for sure better than taking an oath, and it's even gonna be better still than denying the whole thing, which he doesn't have the chutzpah to do. So he's just gonna come clean.
It's very interesting to me because it really speaks to a person's sense of honor and pride. Because to
Yeah.
me, I'm just like, wait a second, why doesn't he just go and say, if that's the case, then why wouldn't he just tell the guy, I can't pay it all. I'll pay you slowly. I'll pay you a small amount. But he can't. We're talking about, yeah, you had people who had real sense of pride, real sense of honor, and no, they can't admit that to themselves. It's like they can't admit that out loud.
Yeah.
So it's either I'll pay you it all, or I'll just pretend
Yeah, I
like
mean,
so
I'll listen. I'll give you a modern equivalent. Unfortunately, and there's a guy I know, and he visits his friend in prison regularly. They were like chavrusas or whatever. They went to yeshiva together. And what happened? This guy, he had a good business, and what do you call it? And he started. He what do you call it? So he had a he
so
had, he
he
had a,
was
he had a lifestyle that was that was to the fullest. Okay, but when then things changed a little bit. Times turned a little bit, and okay, all of a sudden he's not. What I mean? He's not making the same kind of money.
right.
But
Well, it starts slow,
but
I'll put it on
yeah,
credit cards for this month. I'll put everything on the credit cards. I'll take out a loan. I'll take out a
right, whatever it is, all these different things that he's doing.
right.
Whatever, and remember, and his wife has a whole social circles and v'chulu, and whatever it is, and
The trips they take, and
he
it's all
gives
part of the
and he gi- and you know and he gives he's used to giving what do you call it substantial tzedakah and things and
right.
um every time he gets an aliyah he's gonna tell him $36 he's a galachter he's whatever in
So
either case.
those people who are Amish, like, and it affects their parnasa because a big part of their parnasa is their image. People go to them as a financial, let's say, investor
Right,
or whatever,
right.
because
Now,
he
now,
lives
now,
large.
now you're going to start. It looks like you're not successful. Wait a second. So why am I? He's going to lose my money too, or
Well,
whatever.
unless he's Warren Buffett, am I going to trust some investment banker who flies economy? Like, well, oh, I want the guy who flies a private jet. But yeah, there's all that pressure to keep up, appearances. It's
No,
not
but here's
just
the
I'm saying
thing.
a
But
saying
here's the
is
thing. In
right.
this whole thing, this is remember. This is just from. But I mean, it's a guy who he knows very very
Right. It's a
well.
vice
It's a guy he
shahaya.
went to
Yeah.
yeshiva. It's a guy he went to yeshiva to. It's a guy that he was
Right,
he
right.
stayed in contact with after they went to the same shul, whatever. You know what I mean? They're good.
Yeah,
So he
it's right.
knows the guy. He said the guy was okay, so I knew him for credit. Then you know what? I need a bank loan. Well, they're not going to give me a bank loan. What's it called? But it's fine. I'm going to use this bank loan, and it'll get better, and I'll use it to help the business get back to where it was, and then I'll pay back. Okay? Well, it didn't happen, and now the bank's coming after him. They say, wait a second, you falsified whatever it was exactly, but it's kind of
Right,
situation.
right,
It
right.
wasn't. In other words,
So he can get the loan.
I'll deny it when I have the money. I'll pay it back. But it's not. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, honestly, that's how many times when I've seen details of Ponzi schemes, for example, I wonder, and how many times did it actually start off like this? And the guy didn't set out to do a Ponzi
Right.
scheme, especially when it's like guys, like Bernie Madoff, fellow Shalom. I'm not saying this is the case
Right.
in him, but something like that, for example, where he was a successful businessman before that. He didn't
Right.
start off scamming people. He was a good
Right. No, I
investment
mean,
guy.
right. There's those and those.
But
Yeah.
like I wonder that maybe that's what happened. Like he didn't set out
Right.
to
This
to
one
steal from
time,
people. It just
this one
things took
time,
a
what
turn
do you
once.
call
We
it?
said,
But
I'll
now you're
just
caught in
borrow
it
this one
already.
time.
Yeah, but now you're
Right.
caught in it already. So now your
Right.
only option, either you tell people, you know what, I have one, and see,
Well, also there's also the human behavior of like when you see something works that one time. I'll only the first time that's the Yitzhahara to speak like that's something very hard. The Yitzhahara tells you just this one time.
right.
I'll borrow the proceeds from this investment and use it to pay back those, and I'll just do it once. But then you're like, oh, that worked. The
Well,
next
no, but no.
time
By
you
the
have a
way,
challenge.
there's sometimes it could even be valid.
So I'm saying even if this
The,
one
the,
time
the,
worked,
the only thing is you lose face. That's all. I didn't really do
but that's
anything
what I'm
wrong
saying. The
yet.
problem is that now there's that voice inside. It's harder going, hey,
Right.
that worked, and nobody got hurt.
Right.
Oh, no harm, no foul. I'll do it again, maybe even
Right.
bigger, maybe more
Right.
risky. Like,
And
and then it just.
sometimes it starts out even cleaner. For
So I'm
example,
saying,
in maxing out his credit cards, there was no wrongdoing.
right, right.
Okay, now you fudge
But
on a
then it gets
bank
to the point
loan,
where he's falsifying a bank loan because it's just a slippery slope. Is what I'm saying. Like
and
it's just
okay, it doesn't sound like that bad a thing, especially if you can, if you know what I'm saying.
not to
Uh,
pay it back.
you can pay it back, right?
But that's what we're talking about here. Here you have a guy now who's coming to Bezdin and he's
Yeah.
lying because no, I'm gonna pay it back. I'm an honest Jew. I'm an honest person. What
Right.
do
I'm
you mean?
not.
I'm paying it
God
back.
forbid. I'm not gonna. Right.
But it's a very slippery slope, and you have these situations whether it's a guy who, Pasha, he's swapping out Costco chickens for kosher chickens, but yet he's having a daf yomi in his house every day, living as a frum yid. How do
Right.
you have that? And I think it's something
Which
that we
is
all
very
have to
interesting. You know, it's
remember.
very interesting because
The
if you
Yitzhahara is
think
very
no, but if
slippery.
you
Like
think of it, this thing that we are talking before, that like the Torah outmaneuvers him, is
right, right. Oh,
in a way, the Torah outmaneuvers his Yetzer, right? Because it's almost like the guy's like, okay, I'm just gonna tell him this, right? Okay, he's already starting to go down a slope. The fact is that's a lie,
yeah.
right? He's already starting to go down the slope. And what's the next thing? A little tiny, okay, right? So the Torah tells him, okay, if you murder this guy, we'll let you off. It's like, whoa, 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 never mind. I'm coming clean. I'm not. Why?
You would
Because
never go that far.
in other words, that's too big of a jump to go from there to
Right,
taking God's name in vain. Is
right.
like it's like stopping him in his tracks and going, you know what? I'm just going to come clean. And it's almost
Right.
like it helps him out by stopping him from going down that slippery slope. You know?
Especially because it brings up like what the Shach brought up in the last sif about when you have a situation where the guy knows that guy's lying. He's asking for 200 and I only owe him one. So I should just lie. I'll just say that I owe him,
Right.
nothing. So that
And it's
way,
the
and then I'll
truth.
pay him.
And it's
I'll
the
owe him
truth.
nothing. Yeah, but so once you start doing that, where it's like, no, no,
Right.
no, I'll break the rules of halacha and Torah
Right.
because for what I know to be right, it's a very dangerous place to be. It's a
And it's
very
interesting
slippery
because
slope.
on a
It's not worth it.
philosophical level, it's in other words, it's not even about the action, right? If you think of it from an emotional, what's it called level, a philosophical level, it's that I'm removing my trust from the Abishter, and that is what's happening. Because look, the Abishter made the Torah, and
Right. We said in the last
and
sip.
this is how he made the halacha. So, well, I don't trust that Abish's halacha is gonna, I'm gonna lose in this based in because this based in's against me, or whatever, or listen, you follow. There's rules on how a based in is what's it called set up, and you follow them, and the Abish will take care of you. The second you start playing with that, right, it's a loss of emuna. And interestingly, the forcing him to swear also like reinforces that because not just the physical actions that he's sliding, that like the Torah puts a stop to it, goes, okay, fine, take an oath, take Hashem's name. Also mitzad the emuna, right? Fine, take Hashem's name. Whoa, 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 wait a second. What am I doing?
Right.
I
You're right.
trust the Abishter. Time out.
Talking about the Abishter? Okay,
Right,
you're right.
whoa, right. It's almost like
It's
it
reminding me. All
reminds
right.
him that like, look, this is the Abishter in charge. You're gonna
So don't an Abishter belt. Like,
right. What do
right.
you? uh, So it's interesting
Right.
because it also puts a stop like on that level.
I'll mention just about emuna and the reward. Sometimes it's I'm gonna do the right thing regardless of what comes what may. But I will say one of my favorite examples of where there's a reward in this way is actually with Hilchos Shabbos. There's a story in Gemara Shabbos. I'm pretty sure I don't remember exactly what daf. I'll have to look it up later. But about a guy, the whole thing is talking about even making plans for after Shabbos. We've talked about. I think I've mentioned this story before, where the guy he comes out and he sees there's a gap in his fence that fell down on Shabbos. So he goes, "Oh, make a mental note after Shabbos. I should really fix that, so that way foxes and stuff don't come in and eat up all my produce." And he goes,
Right.
"What am I doing? Making plans for after Shabbos on Shabbos?" He didn't even do anything. He didn't say anything. Just a mental note. He says, "You know what? To teach myself a lesson, to like, am I going to be machmir? I'm never going to fix that hole in my fence. Right now, I'm thinking achlata, the hilchos Shabbos, like so that I honor Shabbos and I remember to honor Shabbos. I will never fix that hole in my fence." And such a tumult in Shemayim, they were so impressed that boom, like overnight, a fig tree grew that filled the gap. And fig trees take a long time apparently to
Right.
grow and,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and get
They
large.
take a long time.
Overnight grew and filled the gap of the fence. Not only that, it said it gave so much fruit for generations that him, his children, and his grandchildren all were able to sustain themselves just on these figs alone. They were able to eat and I guess sell and whatever, basically take care of their basic needs were covered just from this fig tree. So it's like a beautiful, story. This guy got the happy ending, the reward. But I think so much of it about it, regardless of what the outcome, I'm not doing it because I want the reward, but it's the yeah, so that means if this is the way he wants it, okay, so that's the way it has to go. It's very hard. It's not easy, but it's so
Right.
important to have these, like to put up these roadblocks. Like you said, the Torah gives
But
us
that's right.
the
It's like the Torah is
the
helping
Ram,
you
yeah,
to stop by stopping you cold.
here's a roadblock. Stop your Sahara before you slip too far. There's a cliff here. Like careful, don't get too close. Otherwise, you're just gonna keep slipping, and there's no
Right.
brakes.
But it's just interesting because it uses the idea of the way people slip, and this is not just financially. It's in most cases. It's right. It's the idea
Right.
of mitzvah gereres mitzvah and aver gereres avera. Right. A mitzvah causes a
Right.
mitzvah, an aver causes an avera. One of the explanations on that is that okay, up until now, I would never think of myself stealing. But now I go, okay, this thing. Okay, now the next step is already, which before would have been far, I would never have thought of, is a
I
little bit
did
closer.
kind of
And
do
each
that
little step, the
once
next
in a
thing is
way.
not that far. So it's like then
Right. It's not so foreign to me
the
anymore.
next thing you know, you're doing things you would have never, ever, ever, you
Right.
know.
It's familiar. It's easy. It's not so foreign. Yeah.
Now
It gets very.
the good thing is it irks me when when people only say that side of the word.
Mm,
The
mm.
other side of the word is mitzvah gereris mitzvah.
That's right.
Is
Yeah. Yeah.
is okay. Listen, I'm not such a big tzaddik. I'm not such a big chassid. I'm gonna do that's okay, but the same thing. So now I do something a little bit. Okay, that fine. It's not. It's a little bit. The next thing you know, you're doing good things that you would have that you wouldn't have thought. You wouldn't have held yourself in such a place before. So also good. Okay. We're holding by the sma zayin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Yishem Nishapetin
Oh wait,
Mishra.
wait, wait. Did we do? Hold on. I
Well, I
think
think the shach is on the same
Ches
thing.
Shach Ches is just before the Smaz Zayin.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
whatever. It's both Yes, because the Smaz is on the Yeshem, the Shach is
one
Yim Yesh
second.
Shachar Shem Zayin.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, yeah, we can do that. It would be well, no, but yeah, but the shach. Where's the shach?
The Shach is Shach Ches. I'm saying.
Oh, oh, oh.
Oh,
Fine.
wait.
Yeah, yeah, fine. Shach has. No, I just wanted to make sure because sometimes you have a shach that comes a few words before the why because
That's covering the same.
because for some reason he made the Ramaskal different and it comes
Uh-huh.
before, but then it's on the sma that comes just
Right.
after.
He's still talking about the same subject. Uh-huh.
In this case, it looks like not.
Yes. Yes. Yim Yesh Shachar Shem
Yes,
Zayin.
Messiah, but if he has one witness that's supporting his position, Dine Eid Messiah Yisbar al Noch Lekam Sim Peizayin Sivov Ayin Mashas Barasham. The laws concerning a witness who is a witness who by himself, being that's not two witnesses, he doesn't really you can't rule based on him, but it still is one witness that's supporting the person's position. This will be explained in its place in Simin 87, Seif 6. See what's written there. and in
A
fact
lot
the
of, lot
Shach,
of stuff going to be explained in it. Pei Zion. We've
yeah,
quoted that like four
the
times now.
Shach has, yeah, he has a few
The Machaber quoted it. The Shach, the Smart, like
right.
interesting.
So now we're gonna have to resist the taiva to switch all the way over to and learn the whole Sif Pei Zion in a second. Okay,
Curious anyway.
Ma. So some say that one witness that assists his position absolves him from having to take an oath. Tam shnei adeis. What's the rightness? And then of course there's a he's saying v'chulu etc. I.e. and there's another opinion that does not absolve him. Tam shnei adeis. What is the reason of these two opinions? Kosavatur, Seif Simin Memvav. The Tur writes in the end of Simin 46. Bedina Eid Echad Lepeitre Mishvur Deiraisa. What's the about the law of one witness that's coming to absolve him of having to take a biblical oath. The Gam Seif Simin Pei Dalid, and also in Simin Pei Dalid, like 84, like we're like everybody else is saying also. Kosav Shnei Hadeyas, the Tur writes these two opinions. Le'inyan lepeitri mishvuas hasis b'kefer hakel. Right. Similarly, over there he writes about what happens if one witness comes to absolve him from, because like we said, even though there's a biblical commandment, I mean a biblical oath and commandment. To take a biblical commandment to take oath, and the in by the case of admitting partially, there is still remaining this other concept of there is a rabbinical oath by somebody who is kafir bakel, somebody who denies altogether. So in 46 he talks about what happens when a witness comes to absolve him from the biblical oath, and in 84 he talks about these two opinions as far as it concerning taking the rabbinical oath by someone who denies everything. And in both of these places, the Tur concluded sheyachol lifter, that he is able to absolve him, that one witness is able to absolve him from the oath, both biblical and rabbinical. V'chein kosav Arosh, and so too the Rosh also says, v'yalef lo mikal v'chein, and he learns it from a fortiori, from a certainly so. He learns it from a certainly so. Im eit echot shemevi hativeya, maskik es anit ba'muksik l'shvuah. If one witness that the plaintiff brings can force the defendant, right, who the defendant up until this point is presumed to be correct,
Right.
and if the plaintiff brings one witness, it forces him to take an oath, right? So well, he doesn't finish the sentence. He assumes that he assumes that you get his logic, and he stops there. So if so, how much more so, right? That the defendant should be able to defend himself in the same way, right? Because if in general the law is with the defendant, right? It's innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Not always. Sometimes there's a chazaka against. There's a presumption going against the in certain cases.
Yeah, if such a claim was
He's a guy
made.
he's a guy who's known to cheat or whatever, different things like that.
Right. Or even sometimes just the claim itself, the smoke, this fire kind of thing. Like that.
But in general, if I'm coming with a claim against you, I have to prove my claim. So
Right.
therefore, right? So because I have to break your presumption of innocence.
Right. Right.
So if by one witness that I bring against you, right? Even though they won't rule the case based on one witness, I have to bring two witnesses against you to win the case. However, one witness I can bring against you I can force an oath. Now you have to take an oath because I brought one witness. So if I can bring one witness against you and it breaks your chazaka, and you have to take an oath. So how much more so the defendant that essentially until I've proven my case, the law is with you. How much more so one witness that you bring absolves you from having to take an oath. That's the reasoning of those who hold that one witness absolves from a shavua, and the Sma seems to be saying that both the Tur and the Rosh, and he seems to be implying that he himself also goes by this opinion that one aid can absolve from an oath. So too the Ramah writes also in Darkei in this chapter. B'Shulchan Aruch, as well as the Ramah also writes it in the Shulchan Aruch in the Haggah. The Kama and Siman Pei Zayin Sivav, in the same place that everybody else is directing us to. That basically that the Ramah there, he rules according to this opinion that one witness does absolve. Ayin Sham, see there.
By the way, some sad news. I looked up our curriculum, and we're actually not even we're not really getting into the pays. Pay Dalet, pay Vav, pay Zion.
Right.
What we're doing for Toen Venitan is Ein Hey, which is a nice big hefty simon. And then we're skipping Ein Tes
Well,
through Pei Beis.
that's why it's good that the Shulchan Aruch that I'm using has it tells you what the
It brings the context.
yeah it has
Nice.
it has notes on what the on what's there in Peizayin basically,
I'm just saying for our
right?
listener, our listeners,
Like for example, over here it says, right, v'chein kosav meishav v'darkei meishav min zeh, right, u'b'shulchan aruch, right, this is what the Ramah says in Darkei Meishav and the Shulchan Aruch, the comments in Peizayin Sivav, right. So, and here it says, "Bahagose in the Haggah in Shulchan Aruch there, machria kedei yazu, she'edam misiyal nitba peitim mishvua." So he tells me over there that Amos says that he holds like this opinion that one aid is he proves it like that it's like this opinion, which is nice because. By the way, Bichlal, I'm not against going and opening pay vav.
I'm just
The
saying
problem is
for
it's
our
a rabbit
listeners,
hole.
they
It's
they
a
should do
rabbit
it
hole.
under. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. You'll
The
get
whole
stuck. So I was
the
just saying
whole yeah.
for our listeners, they should go do it on their own time. They should look it up. But we're in these videos, we're going to be covering what we need to for curriculum. But
Right,
yeah, we're not
and
going down
but
rabbit
it's part
holes.
of the rabbit hole because you'll go in there and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden that'll shoot you to some other thing and all of a sudden it'll mention b'derech agav in Shin Ches regarding Shabbos it says such and such. Next thing you know you're in the middle of a
Which is
hilchas
Taka, if we
mila
all have
hilchas
the will to learn,
gerus hilchas something.
we had the hours to learn Be'iyun is the best way to do it. I
Yeah,
remember
no
when
question.
I was in Kollel, that is I didn't have the opportunity to do that because throughout yeshiva life, you have a curriculum. You're learning
Right, you
this
got to keep
mimer
up.
this week. You're learning this. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to keep up. When I was in Kollel, Rabbi Hillel's there was Rabbi Hillel's Kollel, he wanted to make sure there was a balance of nigla and nister. As long as it
right,
was a balance, he wanted you to pick what you wanted to learn.
right.
So Pasha, there was my morning chassidus. I Pasha learned a mimer. I remember Be'iyun. I looked up every single, and I went down rabbit holes. Meaning, first of all, the mimer that Rebbe that I was learning, he was doing this based off the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer. So I looked at the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer. So then I opened up the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer. The Frierdiker Rebbe in the first paragraph he quoted something from that Marash. So then I went to the Marash, and I went back, quoted the Gemara. I looked it up. Quoted Atana. I looked it up. Whatever it was,
Right.
and it was so geschmack to see, just see how this all came
Right,
together. And
well. In other words, the rabbit hole is a rabbit hole for a reason.
but it is so
It's
that is the best way to learn. But
yeah.
yeah, if you have time for it, you have to right now and try to learn
Well, but
things
see,
context
that's
and
why I like the in middle. You have like Shulchan Aruch Mavur, right? Interestingly, I probably have one here. Yeah, look right here. I have Peda Eid Mavur. No connection. They're not made by the same people or whatever, but the same idea. Where
same
one
concept.
of the very nice things about them. Um, And you can pick and choose how much you want to, because it can really, if you start reading every little thing in there, it can really hold you up. But
I think
one of the
it's
nice things is they do bring the context of the Maramakim. So when it tells you, yeah, and like it says see there, and of course he's assuming that you see there. But it really, what do you call it? It really helps by you don't have to go, even if you don't have the time to go see there right now, but you are able to
bring
gain,
you enough context so you understand yeah.
yeah, to
I
at
think
least
I think
understand the general gist of what it's saying there, which
it
was
is
very
definitely
helpful
something
when
interesting,
you need to move.
right? I think it's something interesting about the classic Sfarim that a lot of them were made, and I'm saying B'Shenim Achreinim, Gemara, Shulchan Aruch. They're very much made and even you look at my Martin with the Rebbeim sometimes it's like with the presumption or the assumption whatever that like that you know what they're referring to.
Right,
There's an assumption like okay, and I'm going to refer to this like see over here, see over there, like or at
right,
least that okay, you'll go and look it up.
right.
And I
Well,
think
you
it's
have
a
right. You have over here
much
with
more
in my makim,
modern.
yeah.
Yeah,
Or,
it's
or
much
or
more
in the case
modern
of
thing.
the Alter Rebbe, he says v'chulu, etc.
Right. But I think it's very interesting that it's funny because it's a much more modern thing. And nowadays, we actually have access to all these farms. Back in the day, there were so many people that didn't even have access to the
Mm,
stuff. But yet they're still referring to it as if you somehow know
right,
all these other Mefarshim or all
right.
these other Gemara, and you know the whole Shas
Right. It's like
already. You know all the
v'ayin b'trumas hadeshin.
yeah,
Who has? By the way, I
translation
still
also,
don't I don't have a trumas hadeshin.
right? Like
Right.
but so I find it very interesting that now we actually could look all these things up and so many, such,
Right.
but yet it's bedavka now that so many svarim come out, these mavur type of
Right.
svarim, where something essential, where again, it stays on topic, but we're going to bring enough information that you don't have to look up other svarim to
Right.
understand what's going on here. We'll give you enough context,
Yeah. No,
enough background.
well, there's two very nice things. One of them is that Sfarim themselves nowadays, right? This here used to be at one point was Shulchan Aruch, Sma Shach, and maybe something else. What's it called? Where here you have the Nesivos Mishpat in here. You have you have all kinds of just in this either underneath they put it or they put it in back. Where even right there you have,
It's
and
all
even if you
it's not for
don't have,
pilpul to you.
yeah, and
Yeah,
even if you
it's for
don't
pshat.
have it, so you can look it up online and find the safer.
Right, right, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm just saying it's also you see it everywhere though. I see even like in modern Shilas Chuvas from current Rabbanim. Older Shilas Chuvas, Ramesha, whatever, like he'll be referencing things, but it doesn't necessarily explain what he's talking about.
right,
Modern Chuvas Svarim from modern Rabbanim, most of them that I've seen are like they're explaining the question, they're explaining the answer from like head to toe. And then the Ramus, even if you don't know the sugya, you could read the letter and like get enough to understand what
yeah,
is this whole sugya right here. What's the question? What's the answer?
right,
Other shuvas try to read like information off the shelf. You won't necessarily know what he's talking about unless you know the sugya.
right.
You don't know what he's referring to,
Which
and
is
I
a
think it's
benefit.
very interesting.
There's a benefit to that, to knowing the sugya.
Yeah, no. So like, I wish I knew stuff that way where I could understand his references, but I definitely appreciate the hand holding and the ABCs, the spoon
Yeah.
feeding.
Yeah, so
It's good.
you don't so you don't have to be like the guy who doesn't get the inside joke between the Sma and the Shach going on here. You know.
Well, I gotta say, like, how many times have I been in like at some shear somewhere, or whatever, where like they're quoting names and titles, and I'm like, I've never heard of these guys. Oh my gosh, am I really such an ignoramus? Like suddenly,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, Siv
All right,
Gimel.
Sif, Jim. Okay, so like Sivai Adam, if a guy comes and he's not being accused by somebody else, Allah who may ask him, he turns himself in. He voluntarily admits,
Right.
I have money that 100 that belongs to this other guy's father, and here's 50.
Right. Right. His father, meaning not just I came and admitted it. You wouldn't have even known about it if not I told you.
Well, maybe I come to the Shiva house or something, but by the way, I owe your
Right.
father $50. Yeah, and here's 50. I still owe you 50. So Patra Af Meshuvah says this. You don't have to take any loan. Well, oh, maybe he's lying. Maybe it was more than 100. Maybe he
Right.
owes more. No. He came, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. I just
Yeah.
want to say,
So
I
and
just
because well and which makes sense because the whole reasoning of the might of miktsas. doesn't apply anymore. The whole point is you're telling me 100 and I don't have the money to pay you. I'm going to try to save face and pay later. In this case, you wouldn't have even known that, let alone you didn't come and claim it from me. Lav dafka, you would have even known that I owe you the money.
Right.
So what? Meaning if I would have wanted to use a delay tactic, which is the whole reason for the oath, I would have just not told you until later, until I have the money.
Right. Right. Because you were not asking for it anyway. So right, it's brilliant because it really builds off of what we've already
Right,
established, and that's it.
the logic of it. Wait, which one's the real you? Which one's the real you? I'm gonna have to find the search to find the real me. We'll have to continue. Okay, so let's see. I guess
Well,
Smach.
yeah, but
Smach.
I just want to say a quick story just along these lines. It's a very beautiful example of just that honesty. And Badafka, when talking about someone else's father, my Shver tells a story of when his father passed away. His father was a contractor.
Yeah.
And when his father passed away, there was a local family was one of his father's clients who came by and said, "We have to tell you a story you'd really appreciate about your dad." And the story goes that he said he did, I think he redid their roof or something. And after the job was done, my Shrek's father came through and said, yeah, so the job's all done. They inspected to your liking. And then he handed them a check. And they said, what's this check for? He says, well, because the estimate I gave you was over what I needed for the job. And he said, what? We're happy with the job. You gave us a quote. We agreed to it. You did the job. Now keep your money. What are you giving us a refund? Like a partial? What is this? And he said, no. I have to be able to sleep at night. I give you a quote based on, what it would cost me to do this, plus, the rate that I charge for hours. And that's how it works. I over
We have a freeze over here.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
switched.
over. You were holding by I over.
So he said I overquoted you, so that messes with my integrity. I am being honest. Like, I have to be honest. I have to be able to sleep at night too. So
Right.
no, I'm not accepting this extra money. You have to take back that I overquoted you. And like, Mark, and that was something my father. I think it really affected him because he said this story a lot. He says this story a lot about his father, and I think it speaks very much to the honesty of what we're talking about. Bichlal, you owe someone money, and I think the Sif just brought it out. The guy comes, tell your father, like, the thing, and you're right. In most cases, that's definitely Lifnim Ashur San did what he did. Because Lamaisa, if you agree on a price, who cares how you came to that price? Lamaisa, like, pay a product. Who cares what my calculation's worth of that? If you want to buy it, that's supply and demand. But I think there is something.
I mean, there are also halachas that in regard to like over to
You
price,
shouldn't overcharge.
but still, but
And
the
even,
truth is, if it's market value and it's
right.
fine,
Well,
that's what I
but
charge. That's what my time is with. Let me tell you. Right.
No, but there's something to that in the sense of morality. Because so what? What if everyone else is also gouging up the price? So what that everyone else is gouging it up? Lamaisa, it only cost me, let's say $20 to buy the barrel of oil.
Right.
But I'm still going to sell gas for $5 a gallon just because everyone else is.
Right.
It's not the right thing. It's not right. Like I said, the right thing is to do right. Is okay. This is how much, and this is how much I need to pay my bills and to keep my gas station open, to pay rent, to pay my employees, etc. And that's what it is. I'm not just going to gouge up prices just because I can.
Right.
Because I can. That's not right. It's not.
Well, listen, now that's why there was a whole outrage, right? When
Hey.
gas was costing $5 a gallon, and it turns out that the gas companies were made record profits, meaning
Right.
they were just using that as like, well, I mean, what can we do? Gas
Right.
price, what's it called? And then they and if as if that didn't hurt the consumer enough already, rather than try to, okay, well, we'll try to absorb some, you try to absorb some, we'll make it through it. It was okay. Let's open season on consumers.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So
Okay,
That's first.
I think we can get through the Sma, and then we'll see this. So it's a very long shach, so we'll see where we get on that. So let's start with the Sma. Mana hayu la'avi lavicha biyadi Potter. So the guy comes, basically he's bringing the case of Gimel. A guy comes and says, I have your father's money, and I gave him back 50, and I still owe 50, and so he does not have to take an oath. Hatam, what's the reason? The Havalei Kameshav Aveda. He's like doing a Shavas Aveda. It's like somebody who returns a lost article. Kivan Delay Tav Yodam is that being that he did not make a claim against him on it, and he didn't even know about it. Or Meshiv Aveda Pater Mishvua. If I come and bring your lost article, and you're saying, wait, time out. There was $100 in that wallet. There's only 50 in there now. Listen, I found this is how I found it. I found it with 50 in there. I don't have to take a shvua. Like it says that like the Tur and the Mechaber, right later in 267. And with this that the Shulchan Aruch says to your father, and he doesn't say I owe you 100, or I had 100, I had 100. Ein leimar mishum de ilu amar kein lechavre. It's not so. Don't think that the reason for that wording is because would he have said to his friend, right? I had 100 in your hand. Yachal leimar, his friend could say, Yodati mechayvze, I knew about it. Vidati hoyel edveilecha akil. And I was planning to to claim against you the whole 100.
Right. I was going to come around. I was going to get to it. Don't you worry.
Yeah. And I was going to claim the whole thing.
Right.
But it's saying leimar in the parentheses. But it's saying leimar, and what I mean to say, lafuki im omar, as opposed to him saying, after his kartani, you reminded me. I wouldn't have remembered it. You know, had you not told me, I would not have remembered it. Right? The chuli alma havi kamesh that according to everybody, in that case, he's returning a lost article. Kivon, who is kirai, because he reminded him. You yourself admit that you wouldn't have remembered it if have not I brought it up. And like it's like it says in the end of Siman 88, and it's easy to understand, right? So he's not talking about that. Rather, he's talking about a case where he comes to him and says, I owe you, I borrowed 100 and I paid 50 and I still owe you 50. And the guy says, yeah, I remember. Now I was going to take you to court for this. The Holocaust of Tur Peches, see if you Zion, that the Tur writes in Siman 88, Sif 17, in this kind of situation. They look him. There's differences that we see. Im kemaidim, meaning in that case, right? So in the case, what are we talking about, right? In other words, he said, first of all, he's saying it doesn't mean your father specifically. So don't think that the father means it means that if you told him necessarily, it means this is not also so that he does not have to take a shvuah. And I don't mean in a case that you said that the guy says you reminded me, because that's exactly the same as the father. If you yourself say, right, I wouldn't have remembered if you had not reminded me. That's the same as saying to the father, or saying that it was from your father that you didn't know about it. But rather, even in the case of I'm saying to you and you tell me, yeah, I remember and I was going to take you to court to it. It still could be, depending on the case, that either he does or does not have to take an oath on it. In the Rainanu that we see, meaning we in this case Rainanu, I think it means we like check, we inspect, but
Clarify.
if it's just like he's coming to beat he's just coming to beat the plaintiff to the punch, right? I know that I already know that you're going to take me to court on this. So what do? I quickly go and I say, oh, I what's it called? And I pay you and I pay you 50. I'm part of Mishmua. I don't have to make a
It's
note.
like two little kids where, like, yeah, one of the siblings was running to mommy to admit what they did wrong
Yeah.
because they see the other sibling was running to tell on them.
Right.
They just wanted to like make themselves look better. It's
Yeah.
like you didn't really admit. You weren't gonna admit anything. It's just
Yeah.
because you saw him running to tell on you that you came here.
Yeah. Oh, you lie or not, or maybe not. Maybe the Dayanim see that this is not the case. They from from being mevar and
Yeah, I
asking
guess
questions. They thought that no, it's he didn't know the other guy was going to take him to court. Lav Dafka was the other guy going to take him to court. Whatever it is.
right. Like
So
you have to do your due diligence, like we said
right.
before. But wow.
So he should have also made that distinction here. That if it seems like he's just trying to beat him to the punch or not, right? So he's saying basically, don't think that way. Ella urcha de milsanakat lavicha. It's the but so you would think that, in other words, the Sma saying you would think here, why does he say your father? Because it makes no difference, right? I mean, unless we're talking about a case where the guy where the plaintiff himself admits that I wouldn't have remembered, then it's the same as the father. But we would have thought that otherwise. We always consider we don't hold like there where it depends on if the Beis Din sees that he's just trying to beat him to the punch, and we would think that's why he's using the word avicha, your father, Dafka, to exclude that case of what they spoke about over there. So he says no, that's not the case. He's just using your father here because it's more common. It's more common that I borrowed money from your father and you don't know about it than that I borrowed money from you and you don't remember it. It's just a more common situation, and he's not excluding the situation of I borrowed from you. Why? The mistama malve a yamafkid teveya pigdoinu alvasi. In other words, generally speaking, why would the guy have waited until now? If you owed him money or a picadon or whatever it is, right? So Stamaza, you would have already brought me to court for this. Why? So why did you wait so long? So that's why it's more common that this kind of case we're talking about is with the father.
Uh-huh. Right.
And Masha'en came ba'aviv umeis. On the other hand, if the deal was with his father, with the guy's father, the loan or he gave him money to watch or whatever it is, umeis, and he passes away. That this is, since he didn't know about it, so okay, so it's understandable why he didn't take it to court. He didn't know about it. And this is also what the Teisvis writes. Al pi shitas pirusham. Meaning on this matter. This is also what Teisvis writes. Ela shalafi only though, let me see. Yeah. Only that according to this, Gam b'samach sivav. So it should be that also in Seif 6. What's Seif 6? Is the case of that if somebody admits to his friend and he says that I borrowed from you, or your collaterals by me, or I stole from you, and I don't know if I returned it to you or not, that he's potter. So hang on a second. He should have said over there also your father, right? The same for the same reason.
Right.
It would be a more common thing. I borrowed from your father, and I don't know if I paid him back. Why would that be more common? Because you would have taken me to court already about it.
Right. Again, the same thing.
Right. So it should be the same thing. Visham nakat l'shainatur hilvisani, and there we see the Shulchan Aruch uses the right, the Mechaber uses the wording of the Torah that you lent me, and not your father lent me. So why is that different? V'ayin drisha, and see what they say in drisha. And interestingly, the note here on Mekayis V'aris says b'drisha lo nimtza l'inyin zeh. We don't find this discussed anywhere in the drisha. So maybe I don't know if there's a missing part. There's a missing part of the drisha or something, but this drisha where he talks about this, he explains this is not to be found. So we're left with the question of this ma. Okay, it's a long shach, but maybe we can knock it out. Especially that would take us to all the way to Siv Dalit, which would be a natural place to stop. So let's try to knock out the shach. So shach, manali lavi biyadi, kasav asmav zalishayne v'hadi ka'amar lavicha. So this is good because the shach's going to talk more about the same thing. So he says the Sma that we just learned, and this is what he says: v'hadi ka'amar lavicha ein leiman mishum de ilu amar kin lechavre yachal leimar yodati mizavdati hil dvei lecha esakel. And don't think that the reason he says your father is because so don't say that it's because if he would say to his friend, then his friend could respond to him, oh, I knew about this and I was going to take you to court about this already. The whole conservator b'simin peiches v'mechaber sham sif yudalid b'kiyetz b'zeh, that they write about similar chilukim that is different, that depends the rayin anu that we inspect in what the guy is saying, in what the defendant is saying. Im kemayrim kedemanitba eloi, if he's just trying to beat the plaintiff to the punch or not. And he should have also, he doesn't understand why, right? This is what we left off with Nisma. So it's a good thing because the Sma who pointed us to the Drisha, there's no Drisha found, so at least the Shach will talk about this. So he should have also differentiated here, right? He should have also made that differentiation here. Ella urcha de milsa naglavicha, but rather he's talking. It's just the regular thing it's a regular thing that it's more common the situation by a person's father that he wouldn't know about it, and not would know about it, and that he wouldn't have taken him to even if he knew about it, that he would have taken him to court by now. Because generally speaking, the guy who's owed, he's gonna go and bring up the claim in Beis Din right away, right, to reclaim his collateral or the money that he loaned. Masha Enkin Aviv Shemes, where on the other hand, the father who died, so okay, so we understand why he didn't claim it yet because he didn't know about it. So that's more common. The Chen Kosva Teisvis Al Shilas Perusham, and so to the Teisvis wrote according to the Shita how they hold according to how they paskin. Elish Lefizeh Gam Besamach Sivav Havle Lemei Maravicha Helvani. Right, so that's what we left off with this ma. He's like, hang on a second. According to this, so in Sivav, right, where the guy is saying, I borrowed from you, or I have your pikadin, or I stole from you, and I don't know if I returned it or not. In that case, he should have also said Avicha, your father. And there he says, you lent me, etc. Ad kan l'shenim. Until this, that's the words of the Sma, which we just learned. Udvarav sisumim, and his words are closed, meaning it's not you can't. It's hard to understand because meaning he doesn't explain it. He doesn't explain why there the Shulchan Aruch is not differentiating between if we inspect if he's trying to beat him to the punch or not. Gam masha hiksha. Also, what he asked, also this that he asks that according to this in Sivav, right, when it's talking about where he says I loaned it or stole it, whatever, and I don't know if I returned it, that he should have said your father. Lo yadaina my comment. I don't know what I don't understand what he's saying. Avolani afrish, but I will explain it. The lekaman siman peches, that later on in siman peches, 88 sif lamed base, right, the sif 32. Kosva Torah mechaber, the Torah mechaber right there. Amar lei mana lecha oila avicha biyadi. If he says, I have either yours or your father's money in my hand. Right, that either you lent to me or your father lent to me. I don't remember. Ufraticha mertze, and I paid you half of it. Veheshiv zeh, and this guy, the plaintiff, he's really a potential plaintiff. He didn't make a claim yet, but the plaintiff responds to him, Lo hayisi zacher, I would not have remembered it. Ach ate hiskartani, but you reminded me. Right? Yedeya ani shaloi parate klum. However, now that you reminded me, I know that you didn't pay nothing. Meaning, if you would not remind me about the loan, I wouldn't have remembered it. But I for sure can tell you but I can tell you it wasn't my father, it was me. And one thing I can tell you, I remember that you didn't pay me. This I remember. But had you not brought it up, I would have forgotten about the loan altogether. But now that you remind me, I know for a fact you didn't pay me. Shepatur. In this case, he's patur. He's absolved from having to make make an oath. Va'afilu mishvas heses, and even from a rabbinical, right? So he's patur from, because remember he's saying here that I paid you part of it.
Right.
He's not saying I paid you the whole thing. So he's patur from a didais, and he's even patur. In other words, to clarify, when somebody says I did not pay you at all, he has to take the rabbinical oath. But there are also cases, but it's also cases that if you're made of a miktsas, if you admit part, and you're absolved from the biblical oath, they still make you take the rabbinical oath. Meaning it gets downgraded as if you would have said, I don't owe you anything, but you still have to take your rabbinical oath. So here he says, in such a case where I say, you know what, no, I now that you remind me, I remember, but I do remember you didn't pay me anything. He's patur from even, he's absolved from even having to make not, he doesn't have to make not a biblical oath and not a rabbinical oath. Why? Because Eina Elo Kameshiv Aveda. He's just like the guy returning lost property. Adkan. Right, so that is in the Torah in the Mechaber over there. V'sham leichilku bein maidim, and there they made no differentiation between if it's like just beating him to the punch or not. right? Here. Why? Mishum shekivon shezeh atzmi meidish le'yizacher, because since the plaintiff himself admits that he would not have remembered. Imkain ain't him. So how could you say he's trying to beat him to the punch? The guy didn't remember. All I had to do to beat him to the punch is not say anything because he didn't remember it. So why would he differentiate between Kemaidim Ilay? Why would he differentiate between if he's trying to beat him to the punch when the guy didn't remember it at all? Masha Ein Ken Kan, on the other hand, here, Eimer Yodati, he says, Eimer Yodati, that the plaintiff says, no, I knew about it. V'daiti hoysel itbayel l'chalakil. Afilu lo yizkartani. And I was planning to take you to the court on the whole thing, even if you would have not reminded me. So in that case, we try to see if he was beating him just trying to beat him to the punch or not. In the other case, where the guy himself admits he wouldn't have remembered, so you don't have that differentiation of trying to see if he beat him to the punch or not. Shuv matzasi b'sma yishanim. Furthermore, I found in the I guess the old sma. I guess there was different an older sma. B'seif hasefer, in the end of the book, beluach hatoyes. In the end of the book, in the list of mistakes, right? We actually see this. I think there are some Tanyas that have it like that. No.
Right, like at the back. Yeah, look at the.
Yeah, so they have the corrections in the end. They have rather than reprint the whole thing, they just added a few pages with a list of corrections. So
right.
He says that he saw this in the old Sma, and the end by the mistakes. That the Sma himself puts there, corrects himself to make this differentiation as just like I wrote. And this is his wording in Sivkatan 8. Ein leimar v'chulu. Right, that you shouldn't say that the reason that you shouldn't say that if when the friend came and said to him, I have I have money in your hand, yochel leimar, the guy could have told me yodati v'chulu, that I already knew about it and I was going to take you. But it's sayni leimar, and what I mean to say, la fuki im omar his kartani. Oh, see, it's funny. It sounds funny to me because we already know this. The reason we already know this is because that correction is already in our sma. If you remember, we did, there was a parenthesis in the sma, and that was the parentheses. But it's saying right. What I mean to say is, and so that's the correction that the shach is talking about. No, that in that case, right, like the shach is saying here, in that case, according to everybody, it's like returning a lost article, being that you yourself admit that you would have not have brought me to court that I not. So how can you say that I'm just trying to beat you to the punch? And like it's explained in the end of Peches, which is the same Toen and Shulchan Aruch that the shach is bringing right now. Viduk al and it's easy to understand. B'seif hasefer, and it's that's the end of what the Sma says, and the end of the book in that chart of mistakes. That meaning the Sma corrects himself explicitly. That there is this differentiation between the cases of if I say you're I would have known about it, but now that I remember, right? So he says specifically that that in that case we don't suspect that he's just trying to beat him to the punch. Whereas if the guy says, yeah, I did know about it, then you have to say, and I was going to take you to court about it. Then we say the basin has to determine if he was just trying to beat him to the punch. Still, it's not certain that there's going to be this differentiation if he's just trying to beat him to the punch, or if he's really admitting. The Dav L'Kametzim Peiches Sif Yudalda, specifically in later on in 88:14. Mechalkin B'Hach, we make that differentiation. Mishum Shetavu Mitchila Chitim, because in that case, his claim was on wheat, right? Whereas if I recall right, the other guy comes and counterclaims barley. Says no, it was barley that I owed you, not I borrowed from you, not wheat. So in that case, we worry that he's just trying to beat him to the punch by saying he owes him something else, because he doesn't want to swear on it. He doesn't want to take an oath. Whereas on the other hand here, whereas here there was no claim in the first place. Meaning, what's he trying to do there? The guy says, you owe me wheat. So he's saying barley so that he can, why? Because by saying barley, he's not a maid of miktas, he's not partially admitting. He's denying the whole thing and then fixing it by saying, I owe you barley, not wheat. And that way he doesn't have to, I believe something on those lines. And so it would seem from the words of the Baal Turumis, Shar Zayin Chelik Beis, B'Shem Ramban. And these are his words. And we have to clarify. A borrower that said to the lender by himself, I owe you money and I pay you half. And the lender responded, I would not have remembered, but you reminded me of and I remember that I loaned you. Now that you said it, I remember that Taka I did lend you a money. And you didn't pay me. I remember also you didn't pay me at all. Nothing. Do we say do we say that that's considered admitting in part, or not, and he has to take an oath or not? The Ramban answers on this, and this is his answer. This is his words. We have this in our hands, meaning there's a general. We have a general a concept that we are aware of. It's a concept in our hands, or like Rabbi Rosenblum Senior would say that you have another Masechta under your belt, man. So this is we have it in our hands. We have it under our belt. She'ein made b'miktos chayav elo kishekodmot v'leidah. We have a general rule that a meida b'miktos, someone who admits in part, does not have to give an oath unless the claim came before the admission. Afilu b'niskar miyatzmei. Even in the case that the lender or the plaintiff, whatever it is, not to be a lender, it could be also again a collateral or whatever it is. Even if the plaintiff remembered by himself, like he admitted to him, right? He admitted him b'chamishim with 50. And then the plaintiff said, "Manish shalom atachayv." Wait, now that you're mentioning it to me, it wasn't 50. It was 100. Potter. He's potter. He does not have to take an oath. Like we say in Shvuas Hadayanim in Masech Shavuos. Tanu chitim, that if he claimed wheat, the kodam v'haidlei b'sayrim, and the other guy comes first and says, I owe you barley. Im kimeide potter, if it seems to us that he's being truthful, and we don't feel like he's just being gemainim, like he's just trying to beat him to the punch, then potter he's absolved from the oath. The shmas minei she'afal pi Shehishlim Dvarav.
Hey, Mendel, I got to use the facilities for a minute. Are we
Okay.
almost finished with this shach, or should I
Yeah,
jump
we
back
are
on? Or?
actually. We're almost finished with the shach.
Okay, so let's just wrap up the shach.
Wait, now we have to open up the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch Siman Gimel to figure out. Can you wait an hour and a half?
I don't know about that.
But he doesn't require you to stop in the middle of Pesukei Zimra also. His maskonis depends if you have to go really badly, But anyway, so
Yeah,
we'll go quick. So here's the misvarav that after from this the plaintiff finished his words. The nimtza, so it comes out tainas chitim esa'idim. So you have both. You have a taina of wheat and barley, because you're admitting me barley. Well, guess what? I'm claiming wheat. So now you owe me wheat and barley. Right? And we have an admission in one of them, and still potter. He's potter. He's not obligated to make an oath. Because you need a complete claim. And then after the complete claim, now I admit it in half. It doesn't help when I admit it in half before you came with your claim. That does not obligate me an oath. In the Lashon of Chachamim and Iksuvis is also like this. Made mitzvahs ataina v'chulu. The same thing that the claim has to come before the admission. V'chein kos v'Ramban b'sefer HaMelchames perek aniskin, and so to the Rambam writes in perek Melchames perek aniskin umashma shesh aylo haisa b'tayin, that there was it's implied from the words of the Baal Trumis there that the question was in the way that the plaintiff claimed, that he says he's kartani. But Ramban Heishiv and the Ramban answered afilu b'nizkar, even if you remember, it doesn't make a difference. Lo Yahavi made the mikzas. He's still not made the mikzas. Kivin shlei kodmat v'lo because the claim didn't come before the admission. And he brings the proof from the wheat and the barley. He does not make a differentiation on he admitted 50 and he remembered that he was owed 100. Bain Kemaidim, whether it looks like he's trying to beat him to the punch or no. Bottom line, admission has to follow the claim. Specifically, when his claim was wheat, that since there's part of a claim there, so you can make that difference. That in this case there's no in this case there's no claim at all until he told him about it. So even if you want to say that here we should also make a difference, that see by Rabbi Gain that he holds it even by a inheritor, that we still even when it's avicha if your father has money in my hands, you still make this difference. That they have to differentiate: is he admitting or not properly, or he's just trying to beat him to the punch? That when the dayan is not able to determine, he's not sure, he can't figure it out if he's just trying to beat him to the punch or he's really admitting. And so then when he says, I knew about it and you didn't remind me, I knew about it already, and I was gonna claim it for you. He's patur from taking a biblical oath. However, it would seem that he does have to take the rabbinical oath. Commission is brother comments in Beches, base, like it says over there. Why? Because dafke by the biblical oath, it has to be that the claim comes first and then the admission. But by rabbinical oath, it does not have to be so. So therefore, even though he becomes absolved from the biblical oath, he still has to take a rabbinical oath. And even according to the Torah Mechaber there, it's only when he says, I wouldn't have remembered. And in that case, he doesn't have to mishvas hasis. In the case that the guy says, I wouldn't have remembered had you not reminded me, then he doesn't have to take even the rabbinical oath. But on the other hand, here where Tayin Yadati, where he says, no, I knew about it and I was going to take you, Vitayin Bari, and he's certain about it. He's not, well, I think. He says, no, I'm 100% sure. I was going to, and I knew about it and I was going to take you. Chayiv Hesis. So he is absolved from the biblical oath, but not from the rabbinical oath. And it could be that Taka, the words of the Sma, really that's what the Sma is talking about also. So I'm not necessarily arguing with the Sma. Okay, here's a very, very short one. Yud and Potter, he's Potter the Harik can make Aveda because he's like someone returning a lost article. Lebalel to its meaning someone returning article to its owners. And see in the Gemara, like it's explained in the Gemara, the reason why you don't have to take a shvua by that case. And see in the over there in the Shach, b'shem Rav Hai, Ushar Peskim, Barichim Melu, as well as Rav Hai and other Peskim at length in this Indian. And we are up to Mitzvah Shem the next time. Sif Daled. Shkech.